Hey, I'm Kathrin Shaffer, host of Unpolished but Called. This podcast is for anyone whose faith is real, raw, and still figuring itself out. If your prayers sound more like rambling than revival, you're in the right place. So this week, we're going to be starting a new series called Christanese Confessions, and this is episode 1. I'll pray about it, aka Christian for No. You know how in every language there are words that mean one thing on paper but something entirely different when spoken out loud? Like when someone says, we should grab coffee sometime, and you both know that sometime means never, because if they actually wanted coffee with you, there would be a calendar invite and maybe even a latte already waiting. Christianese is basically a whole dialect built on that exact principle. We've got phrases that sound holy, but if you peel back the halo, they're really just polite ways of dodging responsibility, delaying decisions, or giving yourself a little wiggle room to avoid saying the word no. And the crown jewel of this dialect, the gold medal of spiritual stalling, is the phrase, I'll pray about it. Now, let me pause here because I can already feel someone clutching their pearls. Yes, prayer is powerful. Yes, we are called to pray without ceasing. Yes, God actually wants us to ask Him for wisdom in everything. But that's not usually what's going on when we say, I'll pray about it. If you've been around church people long enough, you know that 9 times out of 10, it's code. It's like the Christian version of, I'll get back to you, except you won't, and we both know it. Think about it. Someone asks you to volunteer in the nursery. You don't want to do it. Babies cry. They smell weird, and they don't laugh at your jokes. But instead of saying, no thanks, I don't want to spend 2 hours wiping noses and being drooled on, you smile and say, I'll pray about it. Which really means not a chance. But let me put some holy spin on this so you won't be offended. Or maybe you get invited to a Bible study that meets at 6 a.m. on Saturdays. 6 in the morning on a Saturday. That's not a Bible study. That's persecution. You know in your heart that you'd rather be raptured than set an alarm for that. But what comes out of your mouth? I'll pray about it. Translation? I'm staying in bed, but I still want you to think I love Jesus. We've turned I'll pray about it into a get out of jail free card, like Monopoly for Christians. It's polite enough to sound spiritual, vague enough to avoid confrontation, and final enough that no one's going to argue with you. I mean, who's going to challenge prayer? If someone pushes back, what are they going to say? No, don't pray? You shut down the conversation with one sanctified phrase. It's genius, really. Deceptive, but genius. But here's where it gets tricky. Somewhere along the line, we forgot that prayer isn't supposed to be a stall tactic. It's supposed to be a lifeline. Instead of, I'll pray about it, meaning I'll genuinely take this to the throne of God and seek His will, it's morphed into, I'll pretend to pray about it until you forget you even asked. We're using the language of heaven as camouflage for our earthly convenience. And let's be real. Sometimes we even fool ourselves. We say, I'll pray about it, then never actually pray. Or if we do, it's a quick, half-asleep mutter like, Lord, please confirm that I don't have to do this thing I don't want to do. Amen. That's not discernment. That's hoping God rubber stamps your laziness. But here's the funny part. God sees through your Christianese. We can't trick him with polished phrases. He knows when "I'll pray about it" is sincere, and when it's just a smokescreen. We might fool people, but God's not buying it. He's not impressed with how holy we can sound. He's looking at what's actually going on in our hearts. And maybe that's why this phrase is such a good starting point for a whole series on Christanese. Because it's harmless enough to laugh at, but it also points to something deeper. Why do we feel the need to cloak our no in spiritual language? Why can't we just say what we mean? Is it because we don't want to disappoint people? Is it because we're afraid of being judged? Or is it because we've gotten so comfortable with a performance-based version of Christianity that we think sounding holy is more important than being honest? The truth is, Jesus never called us to sound holy. He called us to follow him. And sometimes following him means saying yes to things that stretch us. And sometimes it means saying no to things that distract us. Either way, he's more concerned with our obedience than our excuses. I think of it like this. When Jesus said, "Let your yes be yes and your no be no," he wasn't adding a loophole that said, "Unless you say you'll pray about it first." He was calling us to a kind of integrity that doesn't need spin. A yes that's solid, a no that's clear, a faith that doesn't hide behind phrases. And here's where it gets funny again. Because when you actually do pray about it, really pray, you find that God has a way of exposing your motives. Suddenly, it's not just about whether you want to get up early for Bible study or whether you feel comfortable in the nursery. It becomes about whether you're willing to obey him if he nudges you in that direction. And sometimes he says yes when everything in you wants to say no. Other times, he gives you peace about stepping back. But either way, prayer should bring clarity, not confusion. So, maybe the challenge here isn't to stop saying, "I'll pray about it." The challenge is to mean it when you do. If you say you'll pray, then actually pray. Not the quick drive-through prayer where you toss God a question and hope he answers before your coffee order is ready, but a real sit-down, honest conversation where you bring your fears, your preferences, your laziness, your pride, all of it, and ask him to do you what's right. And maybe, just maybe, we need to practice the holy art of honesty with each other too. Because here's the secret. Most people would rather you say no outright than hide behind a fake maybe. Clarity is kinder than spiritual jargon. A simple "thanks, but that's not something I can commit to right now" is often more loving than a vague promise you don't intend to keep. At the end of the day, Christianese phrases like "I'll pray about it" are kind of like spiritual air fresheners. They mask the smell for a while, but eventually the truth comes through. And the truth is, God's not asking us for polished phrases. He's asking us for honesty, obedience, and a heart that's willing to listen. So here's my confession. I've said "I'll pray about it" plenty of times when I had no intention of doing so. I've used it as a buffer, a shield, a way to look good without committing. But the more I grow my faith, the more I realize that honesty beats image every time. God's not looking for me to impress people with how spiritual I sound. He's looking for me to actually talk to him and then follow where he leads. And maybe, That's what we all need to remember. Prayer is not an excuse. It's not a delay tactic. It's not a polite way to say no. It's the open line between us and the one who actually knows what's best. And when we treat it like the lifeline it is, instead of the punchline it's become, that's when we'll see the difference. So next time you're tempted to say, pray about it, stop and think. Are you saying it to look spiritual? Or are you saying it because you really will? Because one is Christanese and the other is Christianity. And that's a confession worth making. And that's it for today's episode of Christanese Confessions. If you've ever said, I'll pray about it, when you really meant nope, well, you're in good company. We've all done it. The point isn't to beat ourselves up. It's to laugh a little, learn a little, and maybe next time choose honesty over holy sounding hesitation. If this episode hit home for you, do me a favor, share it with a friend, drop a comment with your own Christanese confession, and make sure you're following along so you don't miss what's next. And don't forget, we're still counting down to October 15th, my birthday, when newsletter subscribers get an exclusive release you don't want to miss. You can sign up at kathrinshaffer.com. Thanks for listening, for laughing, and for being part of this messy, beautiful walk of faith. Until next time, let your yes be yes, your no be no, and maybe, just maybe, actually pray about it.